My name is Jane, and I'm 34 years old. My husband Robert is 7 years my junior at 27, and we don't have any kids yet. Although I'm older, I never really noticed the age difference when we were dating. However, that all changed when we decided to get married and I met Robert's parents for the first time. Robert's family lives in a rural part of Maine, which I guess explains why they're so traditional. They weren't thrilled that I'm older than their son. His parents told me, "It's said one should search high and low to find a younger wife. 7 years is too much, Jane. Can you even bear children? As women age, their eggs do too, don't they?" They made such offensive comments that would upset most women. When my father-in-law was rude, my mother-in-law was outright rejecting me, saying, "I can't accept this. Why does Robert have to marry an older woman like you? I'm too embarrassed to tell our neighbors. Robert is supposed to take over the family business soon. I don't think you, a city girl, can handle being part of our family." Robert and I had been together for 6 years, and I dedicated the prime of my life, my late 20s, to him. I was determined to marry Robert. We had been living together for several years, and I didn't have the time or energy to look for someone else. I pushed Robert into proposing to me. Maybe it was his age or his personality, but it seemed like he preferred our relationship the way it was. As soon as his parents objected, he said, "That's why I said it's too early to get married. It's okay to delay the wedding." I told him, no, it's not too soon. No matter how many years pass, the age difference won't change. Then I turned to his parents and gave a deep bow. "I know I'm older than Robert, and there's nothing I can do about that. I will work hard to earn your approval as your daughter-in-law. Please bear with me." His parents reluctantly gave in, but Robert's sister was the real problem. "Just so you know, don't call me your sister-in-law. I can't believe my brother's wife is older than me," she yelled at me on our first meeting. I thought I could handle it considering my experience dealing with difficult customers in my sales job. I guess this is what they call in-law harassment. Despite what I read online, this seems manageable. My mother-in-law mentioned that we would eventually have to move to Maine and live with them. I wasn't aware of this, but I thought I could manage it. I regretted not calling off the marriage then, but things were already irreversible. A year had passed, and I totally regret my decision to get married. Our life hasn't changed much since we were living together before. The major change was that Robert's mother began to call him regularly. I knew what she wanted. She was pressuring him to move back home and probably encouraging him to leave me. Whenever she calls, Robert would move to another room or the bathroom, trying to keep me from hearing. But living in a small apartment, it's impossible not to overhear. She seemed to suggest that I was the one who didn't want to move in with his parents in Maine, which was totally untrue. I once asked Robert if he had any plans to return to his hometown, and he seemed less willing to do so, citing the lack of job opportunities in the remote location. Robert always blamed me for all the inconveniences, which irritated me. Even though he didn't want to return to his hometown, he turned me into the villain and used it as an excuse. Just a while ago, I heard Robert from the next room saying, "So if I'm the one who suggests divorce, I'll be the one who has to pay alimony, right?" He doesn't want to divorce not because he loves me, but because he doesn't want to pay alimony. Accidentally overhearing Robert's real thoughts was disappointing. It might be a good time to divorce now while we don't have any children. I secretly picked up a divorce paper at the town hall, wrote my name on it as if it were a good luck charm, and put it in my bag. Then my sister-in-law announced she was getting married, so I decided to return to my in-laws' home by bullet train. Despite referring to Robert as their heir, our wedding ceremony ended with just a family dinner due to the strong desire of his wealthy family, while my sister-in-law's wedding is apparently going to be a grand event. Even so, I didn't want to be accused of failing to meet family obligations, so I decided to attend the wedding. Since the wedding was on the middle day of a 3-day holiday, Robert and I stayed at his parents' house from the day before. The groom is from the next town, and the wedding will be held at a venue there, so we planned to take a bus with relatives. On the day, relatives gathered one after another at the in-laws' house as the meeting place. The ceremony was scheduled just after 2 p.m. It seems it will start after a 10 a.m. ceremony ends. Due to the bride's room getting crowded, the venue staff, beauticians, and dressers came to the house, and both my father-in-law and mother-in-law were getting ready. During our wedding, it was more of a meal than a ceremony, and we were dressed in slightly better everyday clothes, so the different attitudes surprised me. I changed into a dress that I had splurged on for this day, put on makeup, and styled my hair, and then my father-in-law said, "Hey Jane, serve tea to the relatives waiting." So I served tea with a smile and introduced myself. "Nice to meet you, I'm Robert's wife. Here's some tea," repeating it like a hostess and making my presence known. I was actually told by my mother-in-law to stay in Robert's room, but I wanted to leave a good impression. Soon the bus for my sister-in-law's wedding venue arrived. As the relatives got on board one after another, it was my turn to get on the bus. Then my mother-in-law said, "Wait a minute, Jane, I'm missing my hat. Go and get it." "You mean a hat for the black formal dress?" I wondered about wearing a hat with a black dress, but she insisted, "It's in my closet. It's my mother's keepsake. Hurry up and get it." I thought that normally you wouldn't want to wear a hat with a dress, but it seemed she wanted to wear her keepsake on a special day. "Okay, I'll go look for it." I rushed to her room and searched inside the closet, but it was messy and I couldn't find the hat I was looking for. Everyone else was already on the bus waiting and I was getting anxious. This must be it. I think it must have been about 5 minutes. I found a box that seemed to contain a hat, checked the contents, and dashed to the front door, but the bus that should have been there was gone. My entire in-law family and my husband had boarded and left, leaving me behind. You've got to be kidding me. I was dumbfounded and rubbed my eyes several times, but the bus was nowhere to be found. In my panic, I tried to find my phone, but then I remembered I'd put it in my bag. Since I had left my bag on the bus along with the luggage, it must have gone on the bus in my place. I knew the name of the venue, but I didn't know the phone number. Without my phone, I couldn't contact my husband, and without my wallet, I couldn't take a taxi there. What should I do? I turned pale at the thought, but then reconsidered, do I really need to go to the wedding? After all, I've completely lost the mood to celebrate a wedding. If it were just relatives I was meeting for the first time, that would be one thing, but my in-laws and even my husband knew I wasn't on board. They left me behind anyway, which seems malicious no matter how you look at it. The word divorce crossed my mind, but it's not fun to just get a divorce. I need revenge. After some thought, I came up with a good idea. This is it. I went outside and said, "Hello!" And so with a smile, I began my revenge. The relatives, in-laws, and my husband didn't return on the bus until after 5 p.m. Everyone was quite drunk. I had finished preparing for my revenge and had gathered all the luggage except for the bag that had been put on the bus. I used the phone book by the home appliances in the in-laws' house to look up the number of a taxi company and arrange for one to come 30 minutes after the bus arrived. All preparations were complete. I went out to greet the bus with an innocent face. Robert looked guilty the moment he saw me, but he didn't say anything. My in-laws ignored me and were seeing off the relatives. The relatives glanced at me, but they just got in the cars that had come to pick them up and left. I wish Robert would at least apologize, but that's the kind of man he is. I said to Robert with a smile, "Welcome home." Relieved, Robert said, "I'm home. I didn't realize you weren't on board. I felt bad, but the ceremony was starting, so I couldn't come to pick you up," and started making excuses. I ignored Robert and silently searched for my bag among the luggage. "You've got to be kidding me. Liar?" I shoved the divorce papers in my bag into my husband's hand. What does this mean? What is this? You're joking, right? I really didn't realize it." When Robert realized that what he had been handed was a divorce paper, he started to panic, but I said, "Who knows? I'm surprised that you think such a childish lie would work, and what does it mean that you didn't notice? Are you going to say that you didn't remember my existence at all until the ceremony was over and you saw me?" The in-laws are the worst, but the real enemy was my husband, Robert. Robert was left speechless, but after seeing off the relatives, my father-in-law gave him a pat on the shoulder and said, "Come on, both Robert and we just forgot, right? Pulling out divorce papers over this, city girls really lack spine, don't they?" He seemed to be in favor of the divorce. After seeing the divorce papers, his mother-in-law smirked and said, "I knew it. City girls are no good. She was never suited for a family." This really infuriated me. "You guys are really brazen. If that's the case, you should have only invited my husband and held the wedding without me in the first place. Why did you make me come all the way here and then just leave me behind? Any girl, whether she's from the city or the country, would be angry if you treated her like this." When I lost my temper and shouted, my mother-in-law retaliated. "We never intended to invite you from the beginning. We didn't even prepare a seat for you. Robert misunderstood and brought you along." "Excuse me?" Although I was taken aback, when I turned to look at Robert, he quickly looked away and made an excuse, blaming his mother. "She never told me to come alone, so of course I thought we were invited as a couple." But my mother-in-law's irrational anger continued. "Besides, why did you introduce yourself as the wife while serving tea? We didn't know Robert was married. We were embarrassed when the relatives at the venue asked why his wife wasn't there." "Well, that's what you get for not telling them, and it's strange that you tell me not to introduce myself," I retorted smugly. It seemed to have worked, as I had introduced myself to the relatives as Robert's wife. "So, you didn't acknowledge me and planned to eventually divorce me. That's why you kept our marriage a secret from the relatives and only held a small reception," I guessed. Both my stepfather and mother-in-law said nothing, but I knew I was right. I genuinely decided then to quickly sever ties with such a family. "Enough. I'll give you the divorce you want. I don't need a useless husband or a mean family." I got into a taxi that had just arrived and returned to my apartment on the last train. I couldn't sleep that night, so I started looking for a lawyer online and packing my belongings. I stayed awake until dawn, finally falling asleep out of exhaustion. When I woke up around noon the next day, I found several missed calls from my in-laws and Robert. It seems my revenge worked, I thought. In fact, after being left behind, I had devised a revenge plan, but I didn't want to do anything dangerous or criminal. At the same time, I didn't want to get a divorce without doing anything, just bearing the brunt of it all. Then I remembered how my mother-in-law cared about the neighborhood's opinion. She had bought a lot of tea and snacks to serve to the relatives, and there was a lot left over. I bagged them up and went around the neighborhood greeting everyone with, "Hello, I'm Robert's wife," and a smile on my face. While doing so, I exposed everything they had done to me, including how they had left me behind on our wedding day. Then that night, my mother-in-law and I had a big argument outside. I secretly opened our entrance door so of course all the neighbors could hear. I thought it was a fitting revenge for the image-conscious in-laws. In the end, Robert and I divorced successfully. What I had spread were just rumors, and there was no compensation to pay for it. Having retained a proper attorney, I was able to claim compensation for past events, including the scandalous act of being abandoned at our wedding, and the division of assets turned out to be satisfactory. I feel quite relieved. My sister-in-law seems to have self-destructed after marriage. She hid her harsh personality to get married, but people can't change that easily. Living together brought out her flaws, and they apparently fell out in no time. She got divorced and moved back to her parents' home within 6 months, but by then, the wedding abandonment scandal had become quite the talk of the town. Gossip, embellished over time, painted her parents' house as a terribly wicked family that bullied and drove out their daughter-in-law. They've reportedly become infamous in their local area, assumed to be somewhere like Maine, and are living quite humbly now. As for Robert, it seems hopeless for him to find a wife there. I heard all of this from a neighbor I cleverly befriended and exchanged phone numbers with at the time. It's all what you've done. As for me, I feel like the divorce has cleared up many things. I do regret my lack of judgment with past men, but now I understand the true nature of my ex-husband and his family that I couldn't see back then. Perhaps it would have been best if I'd withdrawn immediately when they objected to our union in the initial greeting and not married at all, but I was immature too. I don't want to deny the times when we loved each other and were happy, so I consider this past year as tuition for my future life. Overcoming the mess and resolving it cleanly, I'm truly glad.